The galaxy trembled at the mention of the Krogar wolves. They were not ordinary beasts. They were monsters shaped by the will of the Zarketh Empire, a race of cold, calculating conquerors. The Zarketh had bred them for war, designing them to be bigger, faster, and deadlier than any natural predator. Each wolf stood taller than a man, with muscles like iron and eyes that glowed in the dark. Their claws could slice through reinforced armor. Their teeth crushed metal like bone. They did not fight like animals. They fought like soldiers. They hunted in packs, moved with strategy, and never stopped once they had chosen their prey. Entire armies had fallen before them. Cities had burned as their howls echoed across battlefields. To the Zarketh, they were the perfect weapon. To everyone else, they were nightmares made flesh. And yet, one day, the Zarketh did the unthinkable. They destroyed them. Across the stars, word spread quickly. The very empire that had unleashed these creatures now feared them. Not the rebels, not rival empires, not even humans, who at that time were little more than a forgotten species on the edge of galactic maps. No, what terrified the Zarketh was their own creation. The wolves had grown too violent, too intelligent, too unpredictable. They were no longer tools of war. They were forces of nature. Even the Zarketh's strongest generals could not control them. Packs turned on their masters, slaughtering soldiers as easily as enemies. Colonies fell silent, destroyed not by rebellion but by the very beasts sent to guard them. So, in secret, the Zarketh gave the order. The wolves were to be erased. Packs were hunted down, burned, and buried beneath mountains of rubble. Their breeding pits were destroyed, their genetic records deleted from archives. The Zarketh wanted to wipe every trace of them from existence, as if they had never lived. And yet, they failed. Whispers lingered. Rumors spread. Some said a few wolves had escaped, fleeing into the far reaches of space. Others swore the Zarketh had hidden away frozen specimens, too valuable to truly destroy. The truth was unknown, but one thing was certain. The galaxy was relieved. If the Zarketh themselves were afraid, then what hope did lesser species have? Races that had once suffered under the wolves' fury felt a bitter comfort knowing the monsters were gone. No one dared to seek them. No one dared to rebuild them. No one, except one species the galaxy had all but forgotten. Humans. At this time in history, humans were not seen as a great power. They did not control vast empires or wield fleets that could match the Zarketh. In the eyes of the galaxy, they were just another stubborn, scattered people, resourceful perhaps, but hardly legendary. But humans had something others lacked: curiosity. Where other races saw terror, humans saw mystery. Where others fled from danger, humans leaned closer, asking questions. They wanted to understand. They wanted to know why. And so, when the first whispers of surviving Krogar wolves reached human ears, they did not shudder in fear. They listened. There were tales of ruined worlds where Zarketh fortresses had once stood. Silent places where no alien dared walk. The Zarketh had left those places sealed and forbidden, warning all that entered would die. Most obeyed, but not the humans. It began with scavenger crews, small ships roaming the forgotten battlefields, searching for scraps of technology. They were poor, desperate, but brave. And one such crew, drifting near the remains of a shattered Zarketh outpost, found something strange. Deep underground, buried beneath layers of ash and stone, they discovered a sealed chamber. Inside were rows of massive pods, glass cracked with age, metal corroded by time. And within those pods, the shapes of wolves. Frozen, silent, waiting. The scavengers stewed frozen themselves, their lights shaking as they fell across teeth like daggers and claws curled into fists. The beasts were not dead. They were preserved. The Zarketh had not destroyed them after all. They had hidden them. The crew argued among themselves. Some wanted to leave the chamber sealed and never return. Others wanted to destroy it, to burn the beast before they could awaken. But there was one voice, soft yet unshakable, that spoke louder than all the rest. A human scientist named Dr. Helena Ward. She looked at the pods not with fear, but with fascination. To her, the Krogar wolves were not monsters. They were a mystery. Something to be studied. Something to be understood. The scavengers thought she was mad. The galaxy would think she was reckless. The Zarketh, if they discovered this secret, would want her silenced forever. But Dr. Ward had a thought the others never dared consider. What if, she whispered, staring into the glowing eyes of a frozen wolf, they were never meant to be weapons? What if they could be more? The words chilled the crew. To them, the wolves were death incarnate. But to Dr. Ward, they were the beginning of something new. And so, with trembling hands, she reached for the control panel on the first pod. The galaxy had buried its nightmares, hoping never to see them again. But on that day, because of one human's choice, the nightmares began to stir. The chamber smelled of rust, dust, and ancient death. Dr. Helena Ward's flashlight beam slid across the frozen pods, each one holding a shape that made the human crew's hearts pound. The Krogar wolves. Even after centuries of silence, their presence filled the room with dread. Their frozen bodies seemed ready to leap forward, jaws wide, eyes glowing with the faint trace of life still preserved by Zarketh technology. Helena's crew whispered behind her. Close it. Seal it again. Burn the chamber. Leave them to rot like the Zarketh intended. But Helena's gaze did not waver. She stepped closer to the pod, brushing away frost from the glass. A massive wolf stayed back, its features sharp and brutal. The creature's chest was still, its breath frozen in time. Yet something in its eyes, something almost alive, seemed to watch her. They are not monsters, Helena murmured. They are survivors. The Zarketh didn't erase them completely. They preserved them, for something. We have to know why. The captain of the salvage crew, an older man named Joran Vance, shook his head. You've read the stories, Doctor. These things butchered entire cities. They turned on their masters. If the Zarketh, were too afraid to keep them alive, then what do you think will happen if we start thawing them out? Helena turned to him, her voice calm but firm. The Zarketh used them as weapons. They bred them for war, for slaughter. But no one ever asked what the wolves wanted. No one ever tried to understand them. Maybe they're not uncontrollable. Maybe they're just waiting for someone different. The crew exchanged nervous glances. They had signed up to pick through ruins, not uncover nightmares. Yet deep down, curiosity pulled at them too. What if Helena was right? What if there was more to these beasts than death and blood? Still, fear outweighed curiosity. Joran ordered the chamber sealed again. We take nothing. We tell no one. We leave this cursed place behind. But fate had other plans. When they returned to their ship, the system was not empty. 3 alien vessels drifted in orbit above the ruined planet. Sleek, black ships marked with the burning sigils of the Zarketh. The crew froze. The Zarketh rarely patrolled such forgotten worlds. Why here? Why now? Helena understood immediately. The Zarketh had never truly abandoned this place. They had left guardians to ensure no one discovered what lay buried below. Joran cursed under his breath. If they skin us, we're done. But the Zarketh did not fire. Not yet. Instead, a voice crackled across the comms. Cold. Sharp. Inhuman. You have entered restricted territory. You will leave at once. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. To argue was death. To linger was death. So they obeyed. Engines roared, and the salvage ship broke orbit, slipping past the shadow of the Zarketh vessels. For hours, silence hung heavy. Only once they were far from the planet did Joran finally exhale. That was too close. We never speak of this again. Do you understand? The wolves stay buried. That's the end of it. But it wasn't the end. Helena could not let it go. That night, as the crew rested, she sat alone in her quarters, staring at the data she had secretly stolen. Scans of the frozen wolves, fragments of Zarketh records, and a single image of the pod she had touched. Her hand trembled, not with fear, but with excitement. The Zarketh were terrified. Yes, but why preserve something if you want it gone forever? Why guard a tomb if you mean to erase the dead? They hadn't destroyed the wolves completely. They had hidden them, and that meant the Zarketh still believed they had value. Helena whispered to herself in the dim light of the cabin. Maybe they were never meant to serve the Zarketh. Maybe they were waiting for us. Far across the galaxy, other eyes watched. News of the salvage crew's brush with Zarketh patrols spread quickly. Rumors ran wild in alien markets and hidden channels. Some whispered the humans had found something ancient. Others claimed the Zarketh's secret was finally uncovered. But only the Zarketh knew the truth. Their spies had seen the humans enter the ruins. They had felt the shift in the air, the disturbance in the silence. And though the humans had left the wolves untouched, the Zarketh were no longer certain they would remain that way. In their halls of iron and stone, Zarketh lords hissed to one another. If the humans awaken them, they will bring ruin to us all. They cannot. They do not know the danger. Do not underestimate humans. They are reckless. They are bold. And they are not afraid the way others are. The debate ended with a single command. Destroy the humans before they return. But Helena Ward had already made up her mind. The wolves were calling to her, not with words, but with something deeper, something instinctive. She could not explain it. She could only feel it. She remembered the way the frozen wolf's eyes had seemed to lock with hers, as though it saw through the ice, as though it had been waiting centuries for someone to arrive. Someone different from the Zarketh. Someone human. And so, while the crew prepared to forget, Helena began her own secret work. Hidden files. Stolen coordinates. Plans for a return. The Zarketh believed the nightmare was buried. The galaxy believed the terror was gone. But humanity, curious, stubborn humanity, was about to prove them all wrong. Because one woman had discovered the truth. The Krogar wolves were not gone. They were waiting. And soon, they would wake again. The salvage crew thought the discovery was behind them. They sold their scrap, took their credits, and tried to forget the sight of frozen monsters staring at them from the darkness. But Dr. Helena Ward could not forget. Every night she studied the stolen files, schematics of the cryopods, fragments of Zarketh code, biological readings that showed faint traces of life still pulsing inside the wolves. The more she learned, the more one truth echoed in her mind. They were not dead. They were sleeping, and they were waiting for someone brave, or foolish, enough to wake them. Helena's chance came sooner than expected. Months after their escape, the crew returned to a neutral space station at the edge of human trade routes. The others scattered into bars and markets, but Helena remained aboard, working alone in her lab. She had smuggled more than files from the ruins. She had smuggled a pod fragment, small enough to pass inspections. Within its cracked metal casing lay tissue samples, cells of a Krogar wolf. The readings made her heart race. The cells responded to stimulation, dormant but alive, like embers waiting for a spark. Helena whispered, "They can be revived." I know it. But she needed more than fragments. She needed a whole wolf. So she returned. Under cover of night, she hired a small craft and one trusted pilot, claiming she needed to revisit the ruins for scientific purposes. The pilot, too eager for credits to ask questions, ferried her back to the dead world. The Zarketh patrols were gone, pulled away by wars on other fronts. The ruins lay silent, the ash plains empty. Helena descended into the chamber alone, the air thick with frost and memory. Her light swept across the frozen pods. Dozens of wolves stood locked in eternal stillness, their eyes clouded with ice. She moved to the pod she had touched months ago, her hand trembling as she brushed frost from the glass once more. The wolf stayed back. Its chest was still. Its claws rested against its sides. But Helena swore she felt its presence pressing against her mind, ancient and patient. With shaking hands, she activated the pod's control panel. Ancient Zarketh symbols glowed to life. She had studied their language long into the night, and though her understanding was clumsy, it was enough. The cryo seals hissed. The chamber filled with steam. The wolf began to stay. Helena's breath caught in her throat. For a moment she considered stopping, fleeing, letting the monster rest. But something kept her rooted. A feeling she could not explain, a bond she could not deny. The ice cracked. Muscles twitched. Eyes opened. Twin orbs of burning gold stared at her through the mist. The wolf's chest rose, then fell, breath returning after centuries. And then it roared. The sound was thunder, shaking the chamber, rattling the walls. Helena stumbled back, heart racing, as the massive beast staggered forward, its claws screeching against metal. Its gaze locked on her, sharp, feral, and hungry. This was it. This was how she died. But she did not run. She stood firm, hands trembling but raised, her eyes never leaving the beast's. "I'm not your enemy," she whispered. "I'm not Zarketh. I'm human." The wolf snarled, its teeth glistening. Every instinct told Helena to flee, but she had come too far to turn back. Slowly, carefully, she lowered herself to one knee, making herself smaller, less of a threat. The wolf's ears twitched, its growl softened, its massive head tilted, studying her. Minutes passed in silence, broken only by the wolf's ragged breathing. Then, with a rumble deep in its chest, the beast stepped closer. Helena's heart hammered as its shadow fell over her. Its muzzle stopped inches from her face, breath hot and sharp with the scent of ice and age. And then, to her shock, it lowered its head. The Krogar wolf, apex predator, nightmare of the stars, bowed. Helena's eyes filled with tears. She reached out, hand trembling, and touched its fur. It was coarse, thick, alive with strength. The wolf did not strike. It accepted her touch. For the first time in history, a Krogar wolf had bonded with someone not Zarketh. For the first time, it had chosen. And it had chosen a human. Back aboard the hired ship, the pilot nearly fainted when Helena led the wolf up the ramp. The beast barely fit inside, crouching low, eyes burning with silent warning. But it did not attack. It sat beside Helena, watching her with strange loyalty. Word of the awakening could not be contained. Rumors spread like wildfire. Humans have done the impossible. They have revived the wolves. They are insane. They will doom us all. Across the galaxy, alien empires whispered in fear. Some dismissed it as human lies. Others shuddered, remembering old wars and blood. But the Zarketh knew better. They felt the shift in the air. Their spies confirmed the truth. The wolves had returned. And wise, they were no longer under Zarketh control. Helena named the wolf Fenrir, after an ancient human legend. He followed her like a shadow, silent but watchful, his golden eyes fixed only on her. He ate no food the crew offered. He obeyed no commands. Yet when Helena spoke, he listened. The bond was undeniable. Still, fear clung to the humans around her. Joran, hearing of her actions, confronted her in fury. "You've brought death to us all. The Zarketh will come. And when they do, it won't just be you they kill. It will be every human world." Helena met his anger with quiet conviction. "Then let them come. For the first time in history, we have a chance to stand against them. Not as prey, not as victims, but with allies the Zarketh themselves could never master." Joran stared at Fenrir, whose teeth gleamed in the dim light, and shivered. "You think you've tamed a monster, but monsters can't be tamed." Helena shook her head, placing a hand gently on Fenrir's fur. "No," she whispered. "He isn't a monster. His proof the Zarketh were wrong. They only saw weapons. But I see something more." And in that moment, Fenrir pressed his massive head against her shoulder, sealing a bond that would change the galaxy forever. Fenrir was unlike anything the crew had ever seen. The giant wolf stalked through the corridors of the ship like a shadow of war, his claws tapping against steel floors, his golden eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Whenever another human dared to step close, his lips curled back, revealing fangs long enough to pierce armor. But when Helena appeared, everything changed. He lowered his head when she entered a room. He moved aside when she walked past. He sat silently at her feet like an ancient guardian. The others kept their distance, whispering in fear. "He'll turn on her. He's just waiting for the right moment. This isn't a bond. It's a trap." Yet days passed, and Fenrir did not harm her. He followed Helena everywhere, his movements silent, his eyes always watching. When she slept, he lay curled outside her door. When she worked, he sat near, his ears flicking at every sound, his body tense and protective. Helena felt it too, a connection she could not explain. She sensed his emotions as though they bled into her own mind, restlessness, hunger, suspicion. and something deeper. Trust. The Zarketh had used fear and chains to control these beasts. Helena had offered neither. She had met Fenrir's eyes and shown no fear. She had spoken softly, without weapons. And in that moment, something had shifted. Fenrir had chosen her. The news spread across human colonies like wildfire. Stories of the bond grew with every retelling. Some believed Helena had discovered a way to control the wolves. Others whispered darker tales, that she had sold her soul to a monster, that no human should trust her, that she was the beginning of humanity's downfall. But not all voices spoke in fear. Among human scientists, soldiers, and leaders, a dangerous thought took root. If one wolf could be bonded, then others might follow. Helena, however, had no interest in turning Fenrir into a weapon. She spent hours studying him, not his body, but his behavior. He understood her voice, not the words, but the tone, the intent. He reacted to gestures, to calm hands and open movements. When she showed fear, his growl deepened. When she showed trust, his ears lowered and his body relaxed. It was not control. It was communication. Helena kept a journal of her observations. He is not mindless. He calculates. He listens. He learns. He responds to respect, not dominance. To patience, not force. The Zarketh never bonded with them. They enslaved them. That was their mistake. Fenrir was proof of a possibility the galaxy had never considered. But outside Helena's ship, the galaxy was not quiet. The Zarketh were furious. Reports of a human awakening, one of their buried nightmares, spread quickly through their empire. To them, it was not just dangerous, it was an insult. They had destroyed the wolves to erase their own shame. And now, the creatures lived again, under human care. To the Zarketh, that was unforgivable. Across their worlds, propaganda spread. The humans have broken the ancient seal. They will bring ruin to us all. They must be crushed before the beasts rise again. Fleets began to move. Helena knew the danger was coming. She could feel the weight of alien eyes watching, waiting. But her focus remained on Fenrir. One evening, as the crew debated abandoning her for fear of Zarketh retaliation, Helena stood before them with quiet conviction. You see a monster. I see something else. He listens to me. He protects me. He chose me. That means he can choose again. Not to destroy, but to stand with us. Joran Vance, the captain, slammed his fist on the table. Stand with us. You're dreaming, Helena. These things killed millions. They don't know loyalty. They only know hunger and blood. Helena shook her head. No, the Zarketh taught them only hunger and blood. But that doesn't mean it's all they are. Fenrir is not a monster. His proof they can be more. The room fell into silence as Fenrir padded in, silent as death. His gaze swept across the crew, sending shivers down their spines. Then, without a sound, he sat at Helena's side, pressing against her leg. The message was clear. She was not prey. She was not his master. She was his pack. That night, Helena stood on the observation deck, staring at the stars. Fenrir sat beside her, his great head nearly level with her own. She spoke softly, as though to herself. The galaxy will come for you. They'll call you a monster. They'll call me a fool. But I don't care. I won't let them destroy you again. Fenrir rumbled low in his chest, as if answering. His eyes glowed like embers in the dark. Helena reached out, resting her hand on his fur. And for a brief, impossible moment, she felt something more than instinct. A thought. It wasn't words, not exactly. But it was clear enough to make her breath catch. Not alone. She froze, staring at him. Fenrir's gaze met hers, steady and unyielding. Her mind raced. Was it real? Was it imagination? Had the Zarketh ever realized these beasts could think beyond instinct? Or had they been too blind to see it? Helena whispered, almost afraid. You understand me. Fenrir did not answer in words. But his massive head pressed against her shoulder once more, sealing the bond tighter than before. The galaxies still whispered in fear. Alien empires still shuddered at the thought of the wolves' return. And the Zarketh still prepared for war. But Helena Ward no longer felt fear. For the first time in history, a human and a Krogar wolf stood together, not as enemies, not as weapons, but as allies. And somewhere deep in her heart, Helena knew the truth. This was only the beginning. The galaxy did not stay silent for long. When word spread that a human scientist had awakened a Krogar wolf, most dismissed it as rumor, a ghost story told in trade hubs and backwater colonies. But then came the recordings, blurry holo footage smuggled from Helena's ship, showing the towering wolf walking beside her. The moment the image reached alien councils, panic began. The Orokai Confederacy, whose ancestors had once fought against Zarketh War beasts, called an emergency session. Their leaders shouted over one another. The wolves are back. No, it's just human trickery. Trickery? Look at it. That beast is alive, breathing. If the humans can tame them, then no world is safe. Across the stars, fear spread like wildfire. Civilian ships rerouted away from human trade routes. Alien ambassadors demanded answers. And everywhere, the same question was whispered. Had humanity truly done the impossible? No one feared the news more than the Zarketh Empire. For them, the Krogar wolves were more than weapons. They were shame, a living reminder of their failure. They had bred the beasts, unleashed them, and then destroyed them when control slipped through their claws. To see those same wolves return, not in their hands, but in human hands, was unbearable. In the throne chambers of the Zarketh High Council, voices hissed in fury. The wolves belonged to us. They were ours to command, ours to destroy. To see them walking beside humans, it is an insult, a crime against our legacy. The Supreme Lord of the Zarketh rose from his throne, his eyes glowing like molten fire. His voice cut through the chamber like a blade. Then we will erase the humans. Erase the wolves. This time, nothing will remain. At his command, fleets began to mobilize. Meanwhile, on a small human colony called Haven's Reach, Helena Ward stood before a gathering of human leaders. Fenrir sat at her side, a mountain of muscle and fur, his golden eyes unblinking. The room was tense. Military officials shifted nervously. Civilians whispered behind their hands. Even the guards, armed with plasma rifles, kept their weapons raised, though they knew they were useless. Helena spoke with calm conviction. You've all heard the stories. Now you see the truth. The Krogar wolves are real. They live again, and they are not our enemies, if we treat them with respect. A general slammed his fist against the table. Respect. These creatures killed billions. They turned battlefields into slaughterhouses. And you want us to believe they can be pets. Fenrir growled low, and the general froze, sweat dripping down his brow. Helena placed a steady hand on the wolf's neck. Not pets. Allies. The Zarketh never tried to understand them. They used fear and chains. But Fenrir chose me freely. He listens. He protects. He is proof they can be more than weapons. Another leader spoke, her voice trembling. Even if what you say is true, the galaxy is in chaos already. And if the Zarketh learn you have awakened their wolves, they will strike. You will bring their fury down on every human colony. Helena met her gaze without flinching. They are coming either way. The Zarketh have never left humanity alone. But with the wolves on our side, we have a chance to stand against them. The room fell into uneasy silence. Far away, in alien marketplaces, news continued to swirl. Refugees whispered that the humans had bonded with the beasts willingly. Some claimed entire packs had already awakened and marched under human banners. Others swore they had seen humans riding the wolves into battle. Fear grew, and with fear came anger. Several alien factions issued formal demands. Destroy the wolves. Hand over Helena Ward. End this madness before the galaxy burns again. But humanity did not yield. The first strike came swiftly. A fleet of Zarketh warships appeared at the edge of Haven's Reach. Their arrival blotted out the stars, their dark holes glistening like blades. The colony's defenses scrambled, outdated cannons locking on targets they had no hope of piercing. The Zarketh commander's voice thundered across every channel. Humans, you will surrender the wolf. You will deliver Helena Ward into our custody. Refuse, and your colony will burn. Panic rippled through the settlement. Families rushed to shelters. Soldiers tightened grips on trembling weapons. Helena stood on the colony walls, Fenrir beside her. The sight of the wolf, massive and unflinching, steadied those around her. For the first time, humans faced the Zarketh not with fear, but with defiance. She shouted back across the comms, her voice clear. "No, we will not surrender. Not to you. Not ever again." The Zarketh commander hissed in fury. "Then you will die with your beasts." The warships began to charge their cannons. And then, in the silence before fire, Fenrir raised his head and howled. The sound cut through the night like a blade. It echoed across the colony, through the walls, through the hearts of every human listening. It was not just a howl of war. It was a declaration. The wolves had returned. The Zarketh fleet fired. The battle had begun. But this time, humanity was not alone. Fenrir leapt from the walls, his massive body moving with impossible speed, his claws tearing into the first wave of Zarketh drones. Plasma bolts ripped through the air, but the wolf dodged, weaving through fire with a predator's grace. The humans fought harder than ever before, emboldened by the impossible sight before them. For centuries, the Krogar wolves had been feared. Now, under human care, they had become a symbol of resistance. The Zarketh had wanted to erase their shame. Instead, they had awakened a legend. And in the eyes of the galaxy, one truth became clear. If the humans and the wolves stood together, nothing would ever be the same again. The night sky above Haven's Reach became fire. Zarketh warships unleashed streams of plasma, lighting the heavens in burning streaks. Human defenses roared back, their cannons spitting bolts of energy, weak compared to Zarketh power, but enough to sting. The air shook with thunder, and the ground trembled beneath every strike. In the chaos, Fenrir stood tall upon the colony walls. His golden eyes glowed as ships descended. Helena Ward gripped her communicator, directing troops with a steady voice, though her hands shook. Around her, soldiers looked to the massive wolf not with fear, but with hope. "Hold the line," she shouted. "Fight for every inch." The Zarketh unleashed their drones first, swarms of black machines shaped like metallic hounds, their claws sparking with plasma energy. They rushed the colony gates, hundreds at once. Fenrir leapt down to meet them. His roar shook the battlefield. He struck like lightning, claws ripping through the drones as though their armor were paper. Sparks rained as metal bodies shattered. Each time he fell, a dozen machines were torn apart. His howl carried across the fields, rallying human fighters who surged forward with renewed courage. For the first time in centuries, humanity fought beside a legend. Above, the Zarketh commander sneered. His scarred face twisted in contempt as he watched from his flagship. Pathetic creatures. One wolf does not change fate. He gave the order. The warship's belly opened, releasing Krogar cages. Ancient weapons, locked away for generations, now unleashed again. Inside, twisted shadows moved. Zarketh had not destroyed every wolf long ago. Some had been kept, hidden in deep cryo-prisons. Now they were unleashed. The battlefield shook as the cages split. From the smoke stepped Krogar wolves, hulking, snarling, their eyes burning red with rage. Unlike Fenrir, they were not free. They were chained with shock collars, driven mad by pain and command codes. The ground itself seemed to recoil as they charged. Humans froze at the sight. Their courage wavered. Fenrir turned his head toward the newcomers, ears flat, teeth bared. These were his kin, his brothers and sisters, but twisted into tools of war once again. Helena's breath caught. They've kept them alive all this time. The first enslaved wolf collided with Fenrir, their clash cracking the earth. Claws raked, teeth snapped, and blood splattered the soil. The chained wolves moved with fury, their bodies stronger and faster from years of genetic torment. Fenrir fought fiercely, but the pack circled him, 5 against 1. Helena screamed into her comms. "Cover him. Focus fire on the drones. Don't let them through the gates." But the humans knew they could not intervene directly. Fenrir's battle was his own. The enslaved wolves struck in coordinated fury, their collars sparking to force obedience. One lunged for Fenrir's throat, another for his flank. Fenrir roared, throwing one aside, but teeth tore into his shoulder, blood matting his fur. Helena's chest ached as she watched. She could not bear the thought of losing him, not after everything. She turned to the human engineers. "Can you jam their collars?" The engineers exchanged frantic looks. "Maybe, but would have to tap into their command frequency. It's locked. Alien encryption." Helena slammed her fist on the console. "Then break it. Now." Fenrir's body heaved with exertion. He pinned one wolf, biting its throat, but another rammed into his ribs. The enslaved pack dragged him down, claws tearing, chains rattling. For a moment, it seemed the legend would fall. Then Helena made her choice. She ran from the command center, sprinting across the burning colony. Plasma bolts ripped the ground near her feet. Soldiers shouted her name, but she didn't stop. She reached Fenrir's side just as he collapsed beneath the pack. She placed both hands on his blooded fur and shouted, not to him, but to the enslaved wolves. "Listen to me. You are not slaves. You are not their weapons." The wolves snarled, eyes blazing red. Their collars sparked violently, forcing obedience. Helena screamed over the chaos. "You are Krogar wolves. You are free." For an instant, nothing happened. Then one wolf hesitated. Its movements slowed, its growl wavered. The engineers, working furiously, cracked part of the encryption. Static tore across the battlefield as the signal wavered. Another wolf froze, its head twitching as though fighting unseen chains. Fenrir surged upward, his roar thundering across the fields. He slammed into the nearest wolf, but this time he didn't kill. He locked eyes with it, golden against red, and growled, not in fury, but in command. The enslaved wolf shuddered. Its collar sparked, then went dark. Slowly, it stepped back. Helena gasped. "It's working." The battle raged on, but now the tide shifted. One by one, the engineers broke the signals. One by one, the wolves resisted. The collars shorted out, falling in sparks to the ground. And with each broken chain, another wolf turned, not against Fenrir, but against the Zarketh. The battlefield erupted in chaos as the freed wolves tore into drones and alien troops alike. Fenrir howled, and for the first time in living memory, the Krogar wolves fought not as monsters, but as allies. On the flagship, the Zarketh commander's fury turned to dread. Impossible. They cannot break the bond. They cannot disobey. But they had. Humanity and the wolves fought side by side, the impossible alliance becoming reality before his eyes. The Zarketh fleet faltered. Their drones fell. Their soldiers retreated. And above the colony, a sight spread across every channel in the galaxy, wolves and humans fighting together as one. The legend had returned, not as fear, but as hope. As the battle neared its end, Helena stood among the ruins, her body bruised, her face streaked with ash. Fenrir limped beside her, blooded but alive. Around them, freed wolves prowled, watching the skies, awaiting her command. She looked up at the retreating warships and whispered, "You tried to erase them, but they are back. And this time, they choose us." The galaxy had changed forever, and the Zarketh knew their time of dominance was ending.